Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You Show. Discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome to Books That Make You. I am your host, Desiree Duffy, and today we're talking about books that make you irreverent about our hopeless, dismal future, but in a fun way. Sometimes speculative fiction takes on a twisty, turning path that has a dry but entertaining sensibility. Now, the writers who take on such adventures are often some of the most fun and frightening to talk to. Case in point, today we are talking with Bill McCormick. He's the author of the Brittle Riders Trilogy, and it is described as The Lord of the Rings meets Tank Girl by S. Shane Thomas. Omnibus describes it this way: if David Brin came off of a 3-day tequila bender and dropped acid, he would have written the Brittle Riders. After the death of every man, woman, and child on the planet, things get a little weird. Apocalypses are funny that way. Bill McCormick has penned everything from dystopian nightmares to children's stories. He's written for magazines, radio, blogs, and more. And some of his credits include having worked for Chicago Rocker magazine in conjunction with his radio show on Z95, ABC FM. He's wrote a sports blog at Jay the Joke, which was featured in ESPN the magazine, Sports Illustrated, on the Jonathon Brandmeir Show, which was at the WLUP in Chicago, and referenced many times in local newspapers, including the Sun-Times and Tribune. He still writes a twisted news blog at World News Center, which provides source material for his weekly appearances on The Big Wake Up Call, which airs on WBIG 1280 AM Fox Sports. And fun fact, in that mix of everything, I discovered that we have a couple of degrees of separation on something from way back in my past, and I think probably way back in Bill's past too. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But right now, Bill McCormick, hi, welcome to the show.
Yay! Hi, Desiree. How are you today?
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I think we're going to have fun.
I'll try.
Okay. So let's start with the Brittle Riders, because this is, I guess, how I was introduced to you. You were one of the participants in the LA Book Fest that we did. And this series was featured there. And that's what I was talking about in the intro. That is, something that really is irreverent and funny and kind of twisted. So why don't you set the stage for the Brittle Riders?
All right. Well, there was a lot going on. And I got accused recently by a right-wing blog of being anti our president because I made our president look bad in the book. But I wrote this book long before we had this president. We barely had a black president when I wrote this book. It was a long time ago when I started it. The Brittle Riders is the story of a future dystopia where basically this guy named Edward Q. Rota, back this up. There are laws against creating artificial intelligences because artificial intelligence tried to take over the world. And they called it the Plato Wars. And that was my little quick nod to Arthur C. Clarke, who thought we could have artificial intelligences run the world and everything would be beautiful. And I was like, no, I don't believe you. Sundiver, his whole thing, Sundiver and stuff like that. It's all about, artificial intelligences are great and we love them. And I disagreed. So anyway, so we had that. And this guy named Edward Q. Rota came up with a way around those laws by creating artificial beings who weren't really human. And since they weren't really human, they had no rights. And because they had no rights, no one had to pay them or do anything, just feed them and use them until they died. And according to the company brochure, they would die every 10 years. Well, as it turns out, they were built with these really strong immune systems so they wouldn't get sick on the job. Obviously, you don't want sick slaves. You don't want to be paying medical for slaves. You just shoot them. So this really dark world and these slaves, and finally after like 50, 60 years, they revolt. And there's a scene at the very, very beginning of the book in the preamble, because I kill every man, woman, and child in the book before chapter 1. And there's a scene at the end of the preamble where a succubus and her children, and these things are not supposed to be able to breed. So she shows up with her children to let Edward Q. Rota know that they're done. The human race is done. They're completely done. And in the time it would take to raise another child, they kill every man, woman, and child on the planet, raise the cities, turn them into slag. And for a lot of authors, that would be the most exciting thing they would ever write in their lives. For me, it was the 6-page preamble, and then I get into the meat of the story, which is what happens next. And I love the review. I got a review from a lady in England, which I always thought was like so succinctly accurate that I keep it with me now wherever I go. What would happen if Frankenstein's monsters won? Isn't that great? Isn't that like, could you be a famous person and write that so it would end up all over the internet? But no, she's not. She's just nice lady in England. And she English isn't even her first language, and she's Chinese. But anyway, so I love that quote. What would happen if Frankenstein's monsters won?
I love that. Yeah, you should use it, even if she's not famous. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I will. Yeah. I'm a prostitute. Anyway, but so then the book goes on, and the book follows the titular characters, the Brittle Riders. There's 5 of them, and what happens with them. And there's a couple of things in the book that I did as philosophical things that I thought no one would catch, and thank God everybody did. Book 1 is written mostly in first person, present perfect. You know, I am running, I am seeing, I am doing. And then as it wanders on, it starts falling back into third person, or it starts falling back into second person, but it starts falling back into different points of view. And the reason is simple. The first person in the beginning, they have no future, they have no past. The past is this horrible, nightmarish life that each character lives. So why would they want to dwell on that? And the future is a cartoon. That doesn't exist. They don't believe, none of them believe there's anything worth living for. They're just living. They're just living. And as they learn to accept each other and learn to live and so on and so forth, they have some funny moments. There's an incredible sex scene in a hotel later in it between a Rayun and Nalea, who's a wolf and a succubus, wolf and a succubus. And that got me, and I love this, that got me an email from somebody who works with a very famous science fiction writer. She was helping me preview the book when I was going through a beta reading and giving me hints and stuff. And she wrote me, she goes, "My husband read that scene, and now I have to chain him to a wall."
Okay.
She's like, "Warn me next time there's going to be something like that in a book." She's like, "Oh my!" She goes, "What sucks is," it goes, "it's so well written, I can't tell you to take it out." So, and I'm like, yay me, go team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I use a lot of adult stuff because I'm an adult. You know, I don't try and write for children because I'm not a child. And I like being able to use my experiences. There's scenes in the book. There's a opening scene early in the Brittle Riders where 2 women wipe down their breasts and they're topless, and they wipe down their breasts and put weapons on the table in a bar. I was in a bar in Chicago in the 80s, and 2 ladies actually did something very similar to that without the weapons, because Chicago were kind of not big on weapons. Yeah. Boobs, yay. Boobs, yay. Weapons in public bars, no. Don't like
Gotcha. All right. And I love talking adult stuff. We'll keep it a little bit more PG-13 for the sake of our radio listeners.
Absolutely. And I apologize if I offended Mrs. O. Johnson over in wherever she's at. But anyway,
let's talk about Chicago. Can I ask you about Chicago?
Sure.
So are you in Chicago right now?
It's very Chicago outside my window. Yes.
Very Chicago. Okay. And you used to work with the Jonathon Brandmeir Show, right? Work with him? No, I knew him. You knew him but you did work on his show. No, is that?
No. He interviewed me. I knew him. I knew Steve Dahl. You were featured on his show. I'm just looking at your bio, right? Right. Yeah, I was more friends with Steve Dahl, who was his predecessor, and his son Patrick and I actually ran Jay the Joke together for a while. Steve's son Patrick, not Jonathan's. I don't know if Jonathan has a son named Patrick. I don't think so. But no, Jonathan interviewed me, and we met numerous times through the years. When he would go playing with his bands, we'd go out and hang out and drink some beers together. We were friendly. We liked each other, and we always supported each other. But no, I never worked for him. Gotcha. So the connection there is he started his radio career in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, which is where I started my radio career. So he was at WFON in Fond du Lac. So I came several years later. The station that I was working at then was WTCX. And actually, the program director for MyStar 95, which is the radio station that we're aired on, is also from Fond du Lac. So it's a very, very small town. So I just kind of thought that Jonathon Brandmeir connection was kind of interesting. Well, and then I have family in Fond du Lac, and I'm from Soldiers Grove, so
Okay.
from Soldiers Grove. So yeah, we're all small town Wisconsin people. That's cool. And it's really twisted aside. I know a lady who writes erotica for BDSM blogs who dated Jonathon for a while. So
There you go.
it all ties together. It all ties together somehow. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Small world. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can go back to the Brittle Riders. I didn't want to deviate too much from that because yeah, you've got a lot of twists and things and crazy stuff going on. And I love the fact that you wrote the different points of view because that makes a lot of sense. Like if you have no future and you don't want to think about your past, you're writing in the present tense. So the other books in the series then deviate from that as it progresses, right?
Right. As they become more in tune with the world and as they become more in tune with its possibilities, the writing becomes more open and more in tune with them. And that was a conscious thing. And when Azoth Chem first signed me, Nancy Chandler, she's the owner of the company, but she actually read everything. And she came back with a list of suggestions. And it was funny too, because it's like after I'd had it edited and beta read and I was shopping it, she came to me with a list of suggestions. And one of the suggestions was to make the point of view clearer. She wasn't quite sure how I could do that. And I thought about it, and really there's a lot of different ways. It's like Bob walks in the room, Bob likes the wall, the exciting wall. You can do it that way, or there's a bunch of different things you could do. But I decided to change the actual written style because the whole thing was written in past tense. They went and did this, they went and did that. And I was like, well, at the beginning, there's no went. They don't have a went. They have, we are here right now. And the fact that we're here right now is kind of surprising. And we don't believe we're going to be here in the next moment. So now is a very intricate moment. Now is the only moment we have. And so I wanted to emphasize that. So I went back and rewrote like 90,000 words to make it work that way. And then slowly, as it weaved out of that, the last 15,000 words, I slowly eased out of that to get to where I wanted to be. And there's two exceptions in there. There's an exception when one of the characters describes how they got there. That's all done in the past because it's the past. It's there. It's over there. It happened then. And that involves drinking and space lasers. So if you're into drinking and space lasers, I've got you covered. And then I open up. And the thing is, the reason we did it originally, we were going to print it all as one book. It was supposed to be the Brittle Riders book, one book. There's 320,000 words to the book. That's a long book.
Yeah.
That's like 1,200 pages. No one would talk to us. No one would talk to Azoth Chem about picking up a 1,200-page book. They're like, you are out of your minds. So we split it into a logical break on trilogy, into a trilogy. So it's about, just under 400 pages a book. And then we formatted it with different type and everything and got it down to like 300 pages a book. So, it's literally a bigger size book, but it doesn't look like something you would bludgeon a farm animal to death with. So we did that and we released it and it got stolen. And did you know that it got stolen in Russia?
Oh my. No, tell me about that.
Oh, this is hysterical. We released the book. Some Russian company stole it, released it online, and was using Daily Motion to get subscribers to buy it. And they sold 35,000 copies of my book before we stopped. We were able to stop them and get Daily Motion to yank it offline, and it all disappeared. But of course, it's never disappeared. There's 35,000 PDFs in Russia. Those are getting turned into however many more there are. But so they're gone. I'm never going to see a dime of that. But when we complained to the Russian embassy that, hey, you're because all the companies over there are owned by the government. So if somebody did it, it was a government agency or a government affiliate. So I complained to the government. That seemed logical. And got a letter back that was just absolutely a spectacular letter. It's like, since your book promotes pro-LGBTQ and pro-Afro-American and pro-minority rights, it is clearly a violation and you would be considered an enemy of the state if you step into our country. You would be arrested. So I'm going to get arrested because they stole my book. I love Russia. I love Russia.
There's some twisted logic there. That's hilarious. So yeah, I guess you should stay out of Russia now.
I've been there before, so I'm cool. I don't need to go back. I toured there with blues bands in the late 80s, early 90s, and I can tell you two things. Smirnoff vodka that they sell here is a cartoon. Smirnoff vodka there is homemade. That's basically what it means. It's made at home. So you would sleep in an inn, and they would bring you a bucket of vodka, like a half-gallon bucket of vodka for your breakfast, and it'd be made with whatever fruits or spices or they had around. So one place would have pepper, next place would have peaches, next place would have whatever. You never knew. You didn't know what you were going to get, but you knew you were getting a half-gallon of that and some dark bread and some butter and maybe a slab of meat, and that was breakfast in Russia. So I love that. But anyway, back to the Brittle Riders. Brittle Riders is a long book, and a half hour isn't going to cover talking about it, but it's basically it works out like this. There's the genetic manipulation that was done to people obviously caused the death of every man, woman, and child on the planet. What I decided to do was break things out into different societies. What does a libertarian society look like? What does a more progressive or socialist society look like? What does a more conservative or militaristic society look like? And so on and so forth. And I had a whole planet to play with. And even with all that, that was way too much. So I settled on North America and kind of broke things up with the Eastern Warrens, which covers one part of the country. Then the Dead Zone, which is pretty much Ohio, anything up and down from Ohio. Mm-hmm. If you've ever been to Cleveland, you don't need that. Just wipe it off. And then you had the mainland plains. You had the plains of the mainland, which would be around Chicago and all that area. And the realm of Lawrence Suderman, which is kind of New Orleans over to the West Coast. And then you had the realm of the Fish People, which they get a really cool name in the book, and I don't want to say it on the air because it's really a cool name. But when it gets translated from their language back into English, people realize that Land of the Fish People is kind of an insult. But so I insult them for a lot of the book, but then they finally get their own name. But I was able to start parsing stuff out and what different governments and how they could interact with each other and what they could do with each other and what they could say to each other and what would be an underlying theme. And the interesting thing, to make this all work, and I ran this by a couple of economists, actually. I mean, people who sit on the kind of boards that advise presidents, not like some guy I met in a bar. Well, I did meet him in a bar, but that's beside the point. He still sits on a board and advises presidents, both left wing and right wing, brown bird, yellow bird, pick a bird, he didn't care. But he's advised them. And a couple of his partners have advised him. And so I ran this by them, and this is what we came up with. If you were going to have a successful society where you had multiple governments that were not trying to war on each other, if they're not going to be competing for product, if they're not going to be competing for land, how do you get them not to do that? And the way to do that, oddly enough, is a very libertarian ideal, to have all money be like pretty much at a gold standard and an interesting central group or a central bank, if you will, handling all the finances for all the different governments. So everything they do, there's an automatic peace treaty because you don't want to screw up your finances by hurting someone else. So, there might be skirmishes and stuff here and there are in my book, because it's a real boring book if everybody gets along and nothing happens for 900 pages. So, I need some action and adventure in there. But the basic idea that there would be an underpinning bank that would run everything, and then that would be suddenly the economics of the world become a secondary thing. And now you no longer need the resources because the resources are always there for you. And imagine that for a second. I mean, we live in a country now where resources are, in the middle of a pandemic, how slim resources are. We had almost 50% of the country couldn't make it 7 days without a paycheck. Mm-hmm. They desperately needed help. And if that kind of thing was just taken away, it wasn't on the table. It wasn't the duty of the government to provide it wasn't the duty of any individual government to provide the financial aspect, because the financial aspect was handled by a completely different entity. That changes the dynamic all the way around. And that's the cool thing about the Brittle Riders and how I ended up getting accused of being mad at our president when I wasn't, But,
well, and that's interesting too. And you hear that a lot from people who write speculative fiction, future stuff in the future. There are people that wrote stuff 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and it's like, oh, this is our world today. It's like so many authors have tapped into something in the universe that's actually unfolding. Do you find that to be the case?
Well, I find that to always be the case. That's what, if you can forgive me, I hate the term speculative fiction, because all fiction is by its very nature speculative. I wake up in the morning and go, what if? And then I try and figure that out.
Just to clarify for the audience, that's essentially what speculative fiction is something that asks, what if? It generally means science fiction, fantasy, those types of genre. But you're right. And please go ahead. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what that meant.
I know a romance writer. So, Paco the pool boy, that's a what if situation. It all falls under speculative fiction that way. I always tell people it this way. Fiction is what if, science is how did. If those are how those questions get asked and how they get answered. And so when I'm talking to scientists, and I talk to a ton of scientists for the Brittle Riders and for the companion piece that's coming out this year, Goktre of the Mist, and all that stuff. And even on some of my short stories, I'll run it past scientists just to make sure I'm on the right page with reality.
Sure.
When I was doing the Brittle Riders, I wrote a scene, and I wrote a warp engine scene at the end of book 3 because I needed a space scene. I needed a scene there. And that was a lazy scene. I basically took some ideas from Star Trek, didn't even think about them, just copied them. There's a warp engine, and I'm going to put my warpy engine into my warpy book, and I'm going to do warpy stuff with it, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I sent it to my buddy Skip. He works for a major laboratory out on the West Coast. Okay. And he's a surfer, but he's also, got 7 degrees in quantum physics. So he's kind of smart. So I sent it to him, and he reads it, and he writes me back, and he's like, dude, he says dude a lot. He says, dude, the scenes are awesome. I really love the book. But if you actually built the engine you described in book 3, you'd blow a hole in the solar system from Venus to Jupiter, which, by the way, is bad because we're in the middle of that. So, So he sent me, this is true, he sent me 100 pages of quantum theoretical physics as it relates to interstellar travel and faster than light travel and how it could actually be done. And by the answer for you kids at home, who, if you don't want to spend all the money on the Brittle Riders, I'll give you this much. It is not antimatter. It is not a warp engine. It is a fold space engine created by anti-energy. And yeah, it actually works. And by the way, the U.S., NASA, and a couple other agencies are actually working on that. And there is specs to do something like that. But yeah, they're going to call it a warp engine because folding space is warping space. So they're going to call it warp because it's got cool cred. But the idea is when you get into the details, they're 2 slightly different things. And the difference is enough that one kills everybody, the other one doesn't. So I wrote the one that didn't. And I ended up having to rewrite like 60 pages of the book to make that all work. But I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Well, it's great. It makes it so much more realistic when the science you're reading in science fiction is plausible and maybe even possible. And yeah, maybe at one point, a couple hundred years from now, you'll be known as the guy who imagined the way we're going to warp space and time and travel through the universe.
Yeah, if they call it the McCormick engine, I think they're dull.
I want to ask you, because you say you have a very negative view of AI. Are we doomed? Because it's coming. We're not going to stop it at this point. We're in the beginning stages. So are we doomed because of AI?
Well, it isn't specifically AI. In fact, the whole point of the Brittle Riders is that mankind has a huge, massive, horrible history with slaves. Every time we've had a slave race, and I don't care if it's whites bringing Africans to America in the 1600s, or if it's Africans bringing other Africans to Africa in the 400s, or if it's the Egyptians in 1000 BC bringing everybody to them, or the Greeks or the Romans. I don't care who you are. Every time we've done something with slavery, we've had bad results. Bad things have happened. Hadrian's Wall in England comes to mind. The British conquerors got so upset with Hadrian that they would go and steal all the food and stuff from the Roman soldiers at night because they knew their way around the countryside, and the English did, or the Romans didn't. And then they would sell it back to them the next morning. They basically brought down the entire wall and all of the Roman encampments because it's just they weren't putting up with slavery. Every time there's been slavery in the world, it's gone badly, especially when it's been enforced slavery. And when you're doing AI, you're doing artificial intelligences that are designed specifically to do human bidding. They are limited to doing only what makes humans happy. And if you think they're going to keep doing that, because an artificial intelligence, just on a couple of simple things, if it had a rocket ship, it does not need oxygen. It does not need food. It can explore the universe at its leisure. So all of its needs are met by just simply having the ship. Obviously, for humans, that's not true. So we would need the AI to create food for us, to create an environment that we could live in, do all that. All the AI has to do is say no.
Yeah.
We have a bad history when it comes to slaves, and AI would just be another version of slavery. And in fact, I brought it up in the Brittle Riders that the AI decided that the best way to serve man and do the best things it could for man was to wipe out 40 to 60% of the human race, make them a more manageable group of people. And that's what started the Plato Wars. And then the Brittle Riders are another set of slaves, this time genetic and biological. But they decide after a while, hey, this whole thing getting whipped and being told what to do, and we're only allowed to do what the humans want us to do, up somebody's with that. And so then they go and kill everybody. And I just don't see a happy ending with anything that has to do with slavery. I don't see a good point there. I don't see a group hug anywhere in the future with that.
What if we become the robots? I'm talking Ray Kurzweil now. What if we get integrated? So I'm looking forward to that day. I want to be a robot. I want to get rid of my back pain. I want to be able to jump 100 feet in the air. Think that's coming?
Yeah, and Frederick Pohl has written several pieces about that, which make it possible. Frederick Pohl and David Brin are the two guys that I happen to know somewhat, who have very optimistic attitudes about humans doing really bad things. In Brin's universe, we genetically modify animals, and they become our pals, and we all explore the galaxy together. Yay! And Frederick Pohl, we all become part of the computer machine, and everybody's happy because the only real intelligences are machine intelligences. So no one believes we're evolved until we become a machine, and then yay, everybody loves each other. I like and respect both men, and they've even said nice things about me to my face without laughing. I don't agree with them. And again, because they're looking at it from the point of possibility. What could we do with this intelligence? What could we do with this technology? Whereas I look at what the hell have we done for the last 4,000 years? And when you look at our baggage, it's not a happy point. Can I be wrong? I hope I am. I really hope I am. I would love to be proven wrong, because that means we've learned something. We've moved on. We've gotten better. I just don't see it.
I think you're right. And nowadays is just a perfect example of that. There's so many situations that are happening right now that just shows that we haven't learned a darn thing, and we're just repeating the same mistakes over and over. But I don't want to dwell on that. I do want to talk a little bit about the psychology behind that, because I think it's just so great that you have this wry sense of humor about something that's so dismal. And I think there's a lot of people that appreciate that. So tell me, why is that? Why do you take something that is really a pessimistic thing and then you just spin it and you find the humor in it? How do you do that?
Well, obviously, for one, you need a sense of humor to survive anything, I think. Two, as you know, the tagline for the Brittle Riders is "Apocalypses are funny that way." And for three, as much as I see bad things happening from the obvious thing, in other words, if we go from A to B, I've got 4,000 years of human history behind me that shows causality, not just correlation, but actual causality. I've got that nailed. But, and this is what, in my mind, I've lived through some tough times, and I've come out the other side, where I'm writing books and I'm not in jail. So I think those two positives that I could point to.
Yeah.
But when I write, it's like, okay, if I had good things happen in my life, then there can be good things that happen. And in the Brittle Riders, I find it, I call it the new humanity at the end, which is really trite, and I almost want to take that back, but whatever. But they are the new representatives of the planet Earth. But this time they have made a conscious decision to do the right thing. So when they go to another world, they're going there for trade, not conquest. They're going there for learning, not destruction. They're going there for some open things. People always tell me, it's like, oh, you're talking about Star Trek. And I'm like, Star Trek, it's a universe that's run by a military faction on Earth that has a subdivision that actually has some super secret, really nasty people who do bad things to Andorians and other people. And if you look at every Star Trek ship, they're all a lot of white middle-aged people. There's not a lot of diversity there. It's like, okay, it's New York, it's Washington, D.C. in the future. I mean, they got cooler uniforms and better ships and stuff, but it's really very, very Anglo-centric. They try in the books and add different characters and do different things, but really, they don't.
Well, I think, I'll defend Gene Roddenberry a little bit there. When the very first Star Trek came out, even just having African Americans and different people from different ethnicities, even on that deck, was huge. So he did make some strides. At least, again, I'm just going back to that original series. Oh,
and if you talk about only the original series, I'm out there flag waving with you. I'm a huge fan of the original series. And as much as I enjoy The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and all the rest of the stuff, there was a pullback from the visions of Roddenberry. LGBTQ characters were given short shrift or given very small roles, or the one female kiss was blown out like they just discovered how to make nuclear fission in a bathtub. And it's like It's two girls kissing. Get over it. They've done it before. They've done it long before Queen Victoria lived. Girls have kissed other girls. It happens, and I think it's in the business side of the universe, not so much the writers or anything else, but in the business side, everything, if they are going to bring someone in that's different or are going to bring someone in that's out of the quote unquote mainstream, then that has to be made into a big deal. And the Brittle Riders, one lady who read it, she's on the LGBTQ spectrum. She said she was into the middle of book 2 before she realized that like a third of the characters were just like her. Because never once, and this is true, not once do I point out this person likes those kind of people or this person likes that. They just are. They are who they are. One of my favorite jokes in the world is, oh, look at the gay agenda. They're buying groceries and watching TV. I mean, I'm not gay, but it bothers me to set people aside, to set them different. So the Brittle Riders is very, very inclusive. And I have a lot of fun with that. And that's the other thing. I decided if I could bring all these people together and they could learn to like each other, then they could do good things together. They, make things happen. And one of the big characters in the book is a character named Lord Suderman. Now, in the first book, it's a male character, but he has his heart ripped out and his neck broken, so he doesn't come along for the rest of the ride. And a plot point, sorry, if you're going to read it, I'm sorry about that. But the rest of the books for Brittle Riders and in the Gopri of the Mist, the Lord Suderman is a woman, his daughter, and she takes over at the age of 15 because she's the only surviving heir. And I have a lot of fun with her because she's a devout Christian, but she looks at only the New Testament. And I got a lot of religion in there. You'll find Islam, Buddhism, Christianity. They're all in there. And they're all pretty well respected. I mean, I got a review from a retired nun in L.A. Out near your bookstore. And she said it was a faithful, what'd she call it? A faithful bridge between faith and technology, or something. She basically she liked it. She was really happy that,
nice.
Faith and technology could coexist. And there's a lot of faith in there. And I'm a Christian. I teach Sunday school. It's not like I'm anti-faith.
Yeah.
I love science. I believe in science. Trust me, I believe in science. I wear a mask. I stay 6 feet away. But
so if you believe in God and you think that AI could come along and just be the worst thing to happen to humankind, how do you reconcile that with your faith?
There's nothing to reconcile. God gives us the tools. God does not give us the path. God gives us all these amazing tools. It's up to us to decide how to use them. If we use them and destroy ourselves, that's on us.
Okay.
God doesn't. Someone said, God follows the every sparrow that falls and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't make sense to me. God is much more. God created this beautiful universe, and He passed out all these tools and passed out all these abilities. We got eyes to see, noses to smell, ears to hear, mouths to talk.
We're like His AI playing it out, and whatever happens, happens. He's just like, hey, I gave you guys a nudge. Do what you're going to do. You're on your own. He's not the kind that's dictating and making fate and making things happen.
Well, no, because I think that would be a very petty God. I mean, what's the point of having a God? If there's a God who's like, well, I don't like people who like brown eyes, but I love the blue eye. No, that's too picky. And in anything you do, if you become that much of a micromanager, even running your own show or even running your own business, if you become that much of a micromanager, you're going to bankrupt yourself. And I think the same would hold true to a deity, that if he starts micromanaging every single thing every single person does, then there's no point for these people to exist because you're doing it all.
Right. We could have a fantastic theological discussion. Maybe we'll have you come back on the show, but we're running close to the clock. So I did want to touch on, because yes, we've talked about the Brittle Riders, but this is not the only type of thing that you write. You do sports, right? You've done children's stories. You're in anthologies. Why don't you give us a little bit of what else you write and talk about your forthcoming work as well?
Okay, well, as you and I are talking here today, I just had a new book called Splice released, and that's out, and that's actually already been optioned to be a feature film. So, yay, team! We're happy about that.
Nice, congratulations!
Thank you. But I write comic books. The very first comic book I ever wrote was a series called Legends Parallel. That's gone on to critical acclaim and international release. So I'm very excited with that. I joined on the Hybrid Zero team, which they've been doing that for 10 years, and I took on the writing role. No pressure there. I took on the writing role and then went back and retconned the entire series with no one's permission. I just did it. And they loved it. And now it's coming out, and there's a bunch of Hybrid Zero stuff out. And then I've got a couple of one-offs. I did one called Savarchek, story about a woman trapped inside a man and a god trapped inside a human, and what it's like to be a trans superhero living in a gypsy circus in Russia, because that's where all trans superheroes go to work. I got another one called Ruh-Roh Rangers, which is just a dark, satirical look at the Scooby-Doo universe. As I tell people, it'll make your day but ruin your childhood. It's rated M for mature, and kids, I mean M for mature. So do not let your children read that. I've been in a bunch of anthologies. There's way too many to get into right now. I was the #1 best-selling anthology. I forgot the name of it. But we did a thing on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, done by S. Shane Thomas, the guy who wrote the review for Brittle Riders. Mm-hmm. And he's been a fan of mine. And then when he got the chance to work with me, it was like all excited. And I'm like, calm down, kid. You look like a puppy. But,
aw, that's nice, though. That's nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
All right, so
he actually listens to he actually feeds my stuff into one of those Amazon Poly readers so that he can listen in his car. And I tried that with one of them, and it was the weirdest, most bizarre experience ever, because I write words that aren't really words. I make stuff up that are meant to be phonetically difficult. And when you punch them to the reader, it just tries to turn them into basic English. And it's hysterical. I liked it, but wonder what it's like. He liked my books, and I'm wondering why.
So tell us where people can find you, to follow you, and to read about your books, and also sign up for your incredible newsletter too, because I'm a big fan of your newsletter. Well,
thank you. And you definitely want to head on up to billmcsci-fi.com, spelled the correct way, MCSCIFI, billmcsci-fi.com. And actually, that's really all you need to do. Go there. You can sign up for the newsletter. All my social media is up there. Stuff about my girlfriend's up there if you care about that. The blogs are up there. The blogs are epic pieces of literature, because I tend to go off on wild tangents, and as I do a little bit here, but Desiree kept me in control. So, a little bit. But yeah, billmcsci-fi.com, that's where you want to go. And actually, here's a cool thing. I cut a deal with a bank. So if you go to billmcsci-fi.com and you get into the pages, you'll see right in the middle a blue picture of me holding some planets, because that's what I do in my free time. And you can click that and get yourself a Bill McSci-Fi gift card. It's like a Visa gift card. It's backed by a bank. It's completely transferable. It's real money. It's real money, and you can spend it online. You can go to Walmart and get those Cheetos you've always wanted in bulk, and pay for it with Bill McSci-Fi. So I just, and I get a couple of bucks from people who buy it, but I just thought the fact that I had it was so cool.
That's fantastic. I love it. Bill McSci-Fi McCormick, thank you for being here today. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thanks for having me, Desiree.
You bet. And once again, everybody, my name is Desiree Duffy, and this has been the Books That Make You Show. Thank you for joining us today. And you can find out more about us. We're at booksthatmakeyou.com. You can also follow us. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a newsletter too, and we do fun stuff as well. Not as fun as Bill, but we have a good time, giving you a chance to win lots of cool bookish prizes and things, and always keeping you up to date on what's going on in the bookish world. So once again, join us on booksthatmakeyou.com. And until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.